Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions. Thank you again so much for our time together. Looking forward to seeing you in the services today and all day tomorrow. We're going to get back into the book of Acts chapter 20 and begin to see a study I call The Decisions of Leadership. We'll have a great time together coming out of Acts 20. And then in a few weeks, we'll start getting into Paul's only recorded sermon that we have, speaking not just to leaders, but speaking to Christians. That's going to take us quite a few weeks to get through. Right now, we're really going to cover chapter 13, chapter 14, and chapter 15 today. But let me just back up into yesterday's devotions to chapter 13, beginning with verse 1. In the course of time, Ammon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Ammon became frustrated to the point of illness on account of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Does that sound like love or lust? Sounds like lust. Now, to make a long story short, Amnon did a lot of things. He got someone to teach him how to rape this girl, and he followed up on the shrewdness of this man, raped this girl. But then Absalom stepped in, took the girl into his home, and said, "Now just be quiet, my sister." And he hid the whole thing. Absalom just covered up the whole thing. David found out about it, was very angry, but Absalom kept the whole situation in check. But in chapter 13, verse 22, it says Absalom hated Ammon for raping his sister. Absalom hated him, but he never said a word. Absalom was a man who was very good at hiding his feelings. To put it in modern colloquialism, we would say Absalom had a good poker face. He never showed his emotions. For 2 years, chapter 13, verse 21, for 2 years, he held back. For 2 years, verse 22, he never spoke to him good or evil. For 2 years. And then one day, he killed him. It's often been said, vengeance is a dish best served cold. Well, he really served it cold. He kept vengeance in his heart, which is something a Christian should never do. He killed Ammon, then ran for his life. But now we get over to chapter 14, and we see that David brings Absalom back because he loved him, chapter 14, verse 1, and verse 2 through verse 22 of chapter 14, because he was tricked by Joab. Joab used a woman and manipulated David and tricked David into bringing Absalom back. So Absalom came back, but Absalom had never changed. In chapter 15, verses 1 to 13, we find that this guy burned Joab's fields. The guy that got him brought back burned Joab's fields just to get his attention. Chapter 14, verses 30 to 33. And then in the rest of chapter 15, we find he betrays his father, King David. He steals the hearts of the people so that they stop following David and they begin to follow him. And he starts a coup d'etat, and then he becomes the guy I mentioned yesterday who actually rapes David's wives on the housetop, publicly in front of Israel, and fulfills the prophecies of Nathan. Now, all of this pain could have been foregone if David had just not brought Absalom back. Now, there's a principle I want you to see here. Don't give people a second chance until you know they've changed. David brought Absalom back unchanged. Now, when you bring a person back into relationship with you who has done something horrible, and you've made a decision to not be bitter, you've made a decision. You can't forgive because they haven't repented and asked forgiveness, but you've made a decision to not be bitter. You've made decisions to move on, but they've never repented, so forgiveness has never taken place. In the 2 years that Absalom was back, and David didn't speak to him, Absalom never went up to his father and said, "Father, I'm sorry, what I did was wrong." Absalom never repented. Absalom had not changed. Now, when you bring a person back into relationship with you that has not changed, you are setting yourself up for even more destruction than the first time they hurt you. Now, people don't like to talk about this today. We want to live in the realm of forgiveness, and that's a beautiful place to live. But you cannot forgive until people change. You cannot restore until people change.